Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good afternoon to the afternoon Roadster Roundtable.
And this is our second Tesla Roadster event, roundtable event. We had good participation the first time around. What we ask is if you have questions, let us know where you're from, and if you like, insert your VIN number. So people are interested in those types of things. We have a number of things to cover today, and we can certainly entertain any questions that you may have regarding Roadster service, the future of Roadster. And let me just quickly run through the intent of this podcast. It's to provide a forum, basically, an online podcast forum for people to join that have Roadsters or don't have Roadsters or are thinking about getting a Roadster. We will eventually have guests that will join us, early Tesla people involved in the evolution of Tesla. And some of the topics that we cover in this podcast is software evolution, supply chain challenges during Roadster production and afterwards, trying to keep the cars on the road, trying to find parts, and the successes that we're having. Additional topics include Roadster valuation changes. This last year has been significant in changes with Roadster valuation, and we're very close to that because of our Roadster matchmaking site. So we see the direction. The census counts. There are a lot more Roadsters than we thought there were, and they keep on growing because people that have Roadsters join the census program and update us as to what vehicle they have and what its disposition is. We talk about threats to survival, such as growing parts obsolescence, and later on in the podcast, I've got a key component in a Tesla Roadster I want to show you, and the difficulties in keeping the cars running. Battery main pack issues, and the impact that Tesla service center consolidations or regionalization for Roadsters has on Roadster service. So again, feel free to ask any questions. It looks like we have our first question coming in.
Yes, it does. On TikTok, NS13077 has asked us, I'd love to learn how to work on EVs to your extent. That's a very nice comment.
It is. Much of it is on-the-job training, and although Tesla over the years now has released a lot of information regarding Roadster manuals and schematics and things like operators manuals. But really the best way to immerse yourself in learning how to repair a car like this is to actually start working on it. And there are good communities out there too, from Facebook to TikTok to and then podcasts like this, and companies like us that are willing to share information. So feel free to email any other questions that you may have regarding that to ev@gruber.com.
We encourage your questions here today. Some of the questions that are not specifically Roadster related we'll answer during our podcast on the Gruber Morning Show, which will be occurring tomorrow as well. So feel free to tune in tomorrow as well if you have more general Tesla questions.
One of the things that we missed in the last podcast was a significant milestone. February 1st apparently was the 15-year anniversary of the first generation Tesla Roadster. And the launch, of course, wasn't the most successful launch in the automotive world. But as this particular article points out, even though the program itself wasn't super successful, Tesla learned a lot from the original Roadster. They couldn't avoid learning the types of things that we're learning, trying to work on them as well. And they used that knowledge to build their next generation vehicle, which was the Tesla Model S. And it was the first vehicle that they built from the ground up, not outsourcing things like body panels and having Lotus involved. And they also worked on developing much of their own parts for that car.
You know, when Elon came out with his master plan, version 1 of the master plan really outlined this as well, when he said that their first attempts wasn't really necessarily to get a car into the mass market. It was to get a high-end sports cars so that they could get extra revenue to keep alive, and also so that they could learn how to build more of a mass market car without going through the learning challenges. I think he was very successful in that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, very much so. And of course, if you look at their trajectory and their rapid growth, it's a success story in this century. To have a company that went from the verge of being on the verge of bankruptcy to becoming the most valuable car company on the planet in the span of just over a decade is pretty remarkable. Probably unprecedented if you think about it.
I think so as well. Well, I do remember the days even seeing in the press where the press was just bagging on Tesla and saying, oh, they're weeks or days or hours or minutes away from bankruptcy. And even Elon in one of his master plans said that, yeah, he invested a lot of money in that, and part of it was to keep him out of bankruptcy and kind of keep things flowing.
I found it humorous too. Back in the day, the level of disdain that the other manufacturers had for electric vehicles. They just didn't believe that it was a viable concept and that it was going to grow any legs and go anywhere. And they resisted for the longest time until Tesla really started to take off, and then realized, maybe we missed the boat here. Maybe we shouldn't have been that myopic in our thinking about what transportation could evolve into.
Oh, most definitely. One of the most beautiful things about these original Roadsters is that they are really, really good sports cars that happen to have an electric powertrain. Mm-hmm. Where most of the companies trying to electrify cars were trying to take an ICE engine type of car and whittle it down and make it small and make it quote unquote electric. And it was like they didn't take it seriously, and Tesla did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only ones that took EVs seriously for the longest time were golf cart manufacturers.
Yeah, most definitely. What do you have about the new Roadster that might be coming up?
Well, the new Roadster actually was announced in 2017. And they say, this article at least says it surprised many, but the reason for it made sense. Tesla wanted to unveil a halo car, one that would clearly show that if you wanted to have the best car possible, it had to be electric. Now remember, the specs in 2017, even today, a 1.9 second 0 to 60 time was just unprecedented. There wasn't an ICE vehicle that could do anything like that, unless it was a top fuel dragster and you couldn't really drive that to the grocery store, right?
Right.
So in 2017, Elon said, this would come to market in 2020. And they started to take reservations at the unveiling. And the two different reservation amounts were $50,000 and $250,000 for a signature edition. And I forget what the actual number they limited the original to. In fact, if any of you watching want to pipe in, this is collaborative. We like it when you guys do some fact checking for us and help us out with this content. But anyway, either 50,000 or 250. So there were a number of people that gave them interest-free $250,000 down payment for this car that they were expecting in 2020. Well, if you think about it, a investment of $250,000 in 2017 during the unveiling, had you put that money in Tesla stock, it would be worth $1.83 million today. So, but in the meantime, Tesla got some interest-free revenue, and it was supposed to go toward working on developing and finishing and coming to a release for this new Roadster. Well, here we are in 2023, and at this point, at least, Tesla is saying that it is still coming out, and 2023 is the year. However, we're not hearing the same kind of information that we are about the Cybertruck, which actually now the service centers are upgrading their production equipment, like lifts. The Giga Texas factory is buying large presses, or already has them installed, from an Italian company, and gearing up for production later this year and potential release this year. But there are a lot of people that are waiting for this new Roadster, and it should be quite a car once it gets here. The only change that we heard about was the thrusters, and we actually had someone contact us today. Do we have any design information on these thrusters that would actually increase or decrease the 0 to 60 time from 1.9 to something even more substantial than that?
The only thing that I've heard about the thrusters potentially is that they're going to come along with assisted driving, because you're going to be going so fast that it's going to be difficult to control the car. And the mind-boggling and hard to believe, kind of believe it when you see it, 1.1 seconds, 0 to 60.
Amazing.
You know, I remember us talking about it when it came out, that this Roadster, oh, anything sub 2 seconds, you're probably just going to shred the tires. You'll never be able to make it. Although we've seen that that's been proven wrong. So I'll be interested to see.
So getting back to some Roadster, or the traditional first generation Roadster issues, we have free services that are on our website, and but I wanted to tell you about each of those and tell you what they're about. Anyone that comes in and requests the free key fob battery gets one, and that's for any of the electric vehicles, mostly Tesla, of course. We have a free Tesla log file analysis for the Tesla Roadster. And this is a very important diagnostic tool. My son Peter, years ago, took some parsing programs that were developed by a number of pioneers, including Tom Saxton, for example, and took this program to the next level and made it a bit more thorough and comprehensive, which allows us to do a log file analysis to tell someone that's having problems with their Roadster, without needing to bring it to a service center or bring it here, what's going on underneath the hood. And the information that we're able to extract is often sufficient to allow the customer to make a decision. Is this a service center visit? Is this not a service center visit because I have a resistive cell and it needs to be recovered or it needs to be repaired? And we can also see things in those log files that haven't yet made it to the vehicle display screen. That's that little 3-inch VDS screen that's in your Roadster. The firmware is very good about providing certain alerts, but there are early warnings that are oftentimes indicated in the log files. Trends, for example, which are a precursor or a predictor for future failures. So again, if you're having any kind of flaky conditions with your Roadster, feel free to email us your log file. And if you go to our website, under newsletters, there is a newsletter that tells you exactly how to pull down your log file. What you're going to need is some very specific things. You'll need a memory stick that's 4 gig or smaller. That's because the Roadster is pretty old and those larger devices weren't available back then. And you'll need to put a folder out on that thumb drive and name it a very specific way, including the upper lower case. In our newsletter, it describes all of this, how to do that. And then if you email that to us, one of our engineers here will give you an analysis of what's going on with your Roadster, or a clean bill of health, whichever comes up.
Most definitely. You know, the Tesla is one of the first cars, I think, out on the market. The Roadster is being the first of the EVs, where the car itself becomes a diagnostic tool. I myself have looked at some of these log files and have been utterly amazed at the ability that I've had to pinpoint problems, go back to the team and say, hey, why don't you go look at, maybe an HVAC controller, or maybe we need to just go back and look at this sheet and this brick on this battery. It's pretty incredible the type of diagnostic work that the Roadster can do, and these types of things are becoming more and more common in all kinds of electric cars.
There's some brilliant design characteristics in the first generation Tesla Roadster. The ESS pack, the main battery pack, for example. Even Martin Eberhard admits that they put an enormous amount of time and energy into that pack because nothing like this had ever been made before. And they had no idea how this would react in an accident, a puncture, drive it into a lake, and then of course safety was the primary concern. The same was true with the firmware. there were brilliant people at Tesla. Greg Renda, by the way, who's now retired, was the
Yes.
godfather of the Tesla Roadster firmware. And there was just, as Mark pointed out, there's some brilliant software available, diagnostic and recording software, which we're able to use later on to repair the cars. So some of the other free services: tire inspection and air check. That's probably no different than a discount tire, but we offer that as well to all of our customers. Another one that is Roadster unique. They have these locking wheel lug nuts that is a Lotus leftover, and with age they deteriorate and eventually break. And when they break, they're almost impossible to find in the market. And you're stuck basically with a flat tire and you can't get the wheel off. And drilling that out is usually destructive. The first thing that we recommend is take those locking lug nuts off of your car. No one that we know of in the Roadster community has ever reported a wheel theft on a Tesla Roadster because it doesn't really fit on anything. So protect yourself. We sell 20 replacement lug nuts on our website, on the e-store. They're also bright and shiny, so they look a lot better than what the original lug nuts have eventually deteriorated into, which is a rusty, mess. And anyway, if you find yourself in that bind where the tire store that you took your car to says we can't get that lug nut off because the key is broken, and most likely they broke it or someone else did with an impact wrench because they're not designed to be used that way, you can get a free lug nut out of our library. And this is again the community coming to the assistance of the community by donating keyed lug nuts to our library, and we pass that on free of charge. All we need from your end is a picture of the broken lug nut. We will match it, send it out to you, and we ask that you return it. And for those of you that proactively change your lug nuts and you have a good lug nut key, if you'd like to donate it to this cause, we accept donations for these lug nut keys. That's how we've built the majority of ours.
We've got a couple of questions that have come up now.
Okay.
First is from Scott Mitchell on Facebook. He asks, are there any of the original Lotus parts interchangeable on the Roadster?
I wish. We all wish, yeah. Only 7% of the Tesla Roadster is still Lotus, and it's usually in the low-tech auto parts, suspension, for example. The rest of it is all highly custom. At one point, they were going to use the Lotus Elise as a shell and electrify it, but because the battery pack was too large, they ended up having to widen the frame, change all the body panels. They're all custom, and those vendors are long gone. The most successful vendor making body panels was in France, a company named Sotira, and they went under years ago. Part of it was bought out, and we've talked to the new company, and they saved none of the original Tesla Roadster molds. So body panels are not available from Lotus. And then you have the electronics that are inside the car. They're highly custom. Later on in the podcast, we're going to show you one of those custom modules and the difficulty that we run into attempting to repair and keep Roadsters on the road because of the customization that was done with the Roadster.
TikTok, SoCal. Welcome back, SoCal. We heard from you in the last podcast. He tells us that Gruber, no joke, is the company I would move over to if they wanted me to.
But we do have a lot of fun working on these cars. It's a constant discovery process. Mark is also involved, by the way, in some of the software, which he mentioned. And it is a fascinating vehicle to work on. It is well beyond low-tech auto. It is high-tech. It is a lot of innovation in the car, and a lot of innovation in the type of tools that we have to develop and the procedures in order to keep the Roadsters alive and the later platform cars.
Absolutely. There is nothing like the feeling of seeing a Roadster come to life after it comes to us and the owner having been told, Your Roadster's down for the count. It's never going to be able to run again.
Very true, yes. It's inspiring and pretty exciting when we bring one back to life. We got one yesterday from a Copart auction. And you're always gambling when you buy a Roadster at an auction because they usually kill them, they brick them, they sit in title jail way too long. And the funniest one is when they advertise it as a runs and drives Roadster, because you know that by the time it sells, it's going to be deader than a doornail. And the auction house doesn't take any responsibility because their excuse is, well, it ran and drive when it got here. There's no guarantees what it's going to be like when it leaves. That's not our problem. But anyway, this particular Roadster came here. We had bought it for parts and suspected that it may have a recoverable battery, meaning that it's dead, but we'll bring it back to life. It turns out this car came in with 13 miles on the odometer, which surprised us all.
Wow.
There were pieces hanging off of it. It was that bad. We took the loose pieces off, and it began charging right away. And then we realized that it's actually a runs and drives car that came from auction. We drove it up and down the street a couple of times just to prove it. And unfortunately, though, it is now a donor car and is going to help keep other Roadsters alive. But that thrill that we were talking about of having a Roadster come back to life, it is just amazing sometimes how much work you have to go through, but the reward is you now have a Roadster that is breathing and driving again.
Absolutely.
Anyone, by the way, that wants to apply for a position here, the only positions we have right now are in Phoenix, Arizona, and we would certainly love to talk to someone about working here if they were able to relocate. The things that they would be learning is not just low-tech auto, in fact, very little of that. The majority would be things like electronics repairs, software, and working on all of the higher tech portions in the car.
You know, of the services that you've talked about, I know that there's at least one other that you wanted to go into, the Roadster matchmaking. Why don't you tell us about that more?
Okay. 2 years ago, we realized that people were coming to us to sell their vehicles, and we would unite them with a potential seller, and we began to collect a loose list of buyers and sellers and realized that those lists are starting to grow pretty large. So we said, you know, why not just throw a free Roadster matchmaking site or portion out on our website? And it has been enormously successful. Here's some of the stats. We've been doing this about 2 years now. And by the way, everybody asks, and I need to dispel this myth first of all. Yeah, you guys say free, but what's the catch? Yeah. Where's the angle? You know, how can it be free? That type of thing. It is totally free. We offer certain services to the Roadster community, and even though it costs us money, we feel that we have an obligation to support that community, and the Roadster matchmaking site is one of those. There are a number of people involved in maintaining the listings. Richard is one of them. I'm one of them, and some of the other staff. But just to give you an example now, within the last 2 years that we've been doing this, 50 Roadsters have exchanged hands based on our matchmaking site. The advantage that people have that are selling on our site is a number of things, but the primary one is they now have two people that they can talk to, someone that is trying to buy a car. They can talk to the original owner directly because we do matchmaking. We don't try to act as a broker and funnel information. We allow the Roadster buyer and seller to communicate with each other. And the second person they get to talk to, or the second entity, is tech support. We are there for both the sellers, who oftentimes have technical questions, or have listing questions like, how do I list my car? What kind of a backstory are people looking for? What are the accessories that I should be offering? Pictures and valuation questions. And then, of course, the sellers often have the same set of or different set of questions, and we're always there, free of charge, to assist with that. The prices that you see on our website are asking prices. I always advise people selling cars, no one likes to pay asking price. So set a price that you're comfortable with, but not dead set on, and be prepared to do some negotiation because everybody likes a deal. Now, I also tell the potential buyers, don't lowball these people. You know, they're fine, decent people. They don't like to get lowballed. You know, give them a reasonable counter offer. And so anyway, there's some engagement rules that we encourage people to follow, both buyers and sellers. The instant we get your listing for your Roadster, we will coach you many times on what kind of pictures to take, but if you don't have good quality pictures, we can run with that as well. And then once you get a potential buyer, you can give them additional sets of pictures as requested. As soon as we get a listing, we have been collecting pre-qualified Tesla Roadster buyers. These are people that have contacted us, have told us why they're looking for a Roadster. And we get to know them. They're oftentimes collectors with many other cars, you know, like Jay Leno, for example.
Yes.
And but they're looking for a Roadster. As soon as we get your listing, we post it, we then send out an email to 337 pre-qualified Roadster buyers looking for particular types of cars. And that's what helps sell these cars. Oftentimes, after we do that initial broadcast to the pre-qualified buyers, these cars sell before they even make it out into social media, which within 24 hours we usually advertise and post there as well. In addition to our listings, our website hits are almost 1,000 per day. So it gets a lot of traffic, and of course the people that hit our website are Tesla people or people in the EV space, and a lot of Roadster people. So your listing will get a lot of visibility. We've talked about the support, the buyer support, and then post-sale support. After these cars sell, the new owners typically have a lot of questions. My car's overheating. How do I how do I top off the fluid? Again, all of these services are free of charge, and we spend a lot of time servicing our customers, our Roadster customers. So anyway, that's the story on the Roadster matchmaking site. If you have a Roadster that you want to sell or that you want to buy, it's a great site to check in on.
You know, if any of you guys out there want to know one of the best success stories that we have on the Roadster matchmaking site, just go and look in the press at some point for the Roadster that sold for $290,000. That Roadster sold on our site through our matchmaking service. You know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think
it broke all the records.
It broke all the records, and it sold within less than 24 hours.
It did indeed, yes.
You know, the seller really had no idea how much his Roadster might be worth. It was really, really a sweet, pristine Roadster, and there were a lot of people interested in it.
And I'm going to suggest that keep an eye on that matchmaking site, because we are very close to listing one just like it that has a very unusual pedigree. It has a VIN number that's even lower than that one that sold for just about $300,000, and it will be sold as a pair with another car included with another low VIN and a couple of signature cars.
Oh, that's right.
Want to pull that up real quick, Pete?
What's that, Jesse?
Pulling that up for the audience.
Oh, okay, great.
While we do that, we've got a couple of questions backed up right now. First, for DMillie88, where are you located? We're located in the north area of Phoenix, Arizona, if you're familiar with the Phoenix metro area, we're by the Deer Valley Airport. And then we've got two questions/comments from Van Goat Wagon, who is
Well, he usually joins us in the mornings. That's why he's saying, well, look who it is. Great seeing you all again. You know, he was used to joining us at 8:30 in the morning, and that's why in this afternoon it's a bit of a different time experience for him.
Yeah, we sure do like seeing you. He has a question too, Pete. Have you all seen a Tesla big rig in your area yet?
Well, yes, we have. Actually, we posted on, was it Facebook, guys? We didn't do a video yet, right? Yeah, it was accidental. The guys were out catching B-roll shots in our neighborhood here, and a large vehicle drove by them, and it was totally silent, and they looked up and they saw that it was a Tesla semi. They followed it, and it happened to be just a few buildings from Gruber Motor Company. There's a wrap company there. It was just before Super Bowl, 1 week before Super Bowl, and apparently Frito-Lay had sent these vehicles down here to get wrapped. And so anyway, we used that opportunity to bring a Tesla Roadster and park it right up next to this gigantic Tesla semi. and the caption on a number of social media sites was "Father and Son?" ? And of course, people weren't sure which was which, based on size. We have our first in this podcast, "Why are you wearing sunglasses indoors? LOL" question from TikTok. B. Well, there will be a reveal at some point as to why there are always sunglasses involved in the Gruber social media productions. But for now, we just simply keep people guessing.
We encourage you to put on a pair when you're watching us and kind of see what it turns out like.
It may be quite revealing, yes.
Yes, it may. There's a question on YouTube from Multicamzilla. Do you know anyone who does rust remediation on a 2014 Model S? And Multicamzilla, since we're trying to focus on the Tesla Roadsters, specifically the first generation Roadsters, we'll be glad to answer your question. But we encourage you to come back tomorrow when we do the Gruber Morning Show podcast. It covers all things for Tesla Motors, including Model S's, and we'll make sure that we get that question answered there.
We appreciate you visiting us. So I wanted to show the Tesla Roadster owners again something that explains why the Tesla Roadster is a difficult vehicle to work on. What I have here is a Martech brand DC to DC converter, also called an APS unit. That stands for Auxiliary Power Source. And if you can see, this is a large circuit board. There's a case that goes around this, and if you guys want to throw up the image, the first image of the APS unit, I can show you where this piece of equipment or this electronic module resides inside a Tesla Roadster. It is off to the side, the left side of the ESS pack.
Can you show the battery pack, is that what you're saying?
The battery ESS pack 1, and we're looking at the cutaway version of the pack showing the DC to DC converter inside the pack. And once that comes up here, you'll see that there is a metal case around this. And what this does is it sits deep inside the 1,000-pound battery pack, and it converts the 400 volts. It's the other one, the previous one. There are two of them. What you're seeing here is in the lower left-hand corner is the steel enclosure, and then there's a cutaway version that shows the placement inside the pack.
Can you explain about the drawing?
Yes, please. So what this does, it has a cooling jacket that runs through it, just like the sheets in the main battery pack. And there you can see it's the lower left-hand corner. Deep inside the pack, this resides, and you know what? This again reinforces that the Tesla Roadster was not really meant to be serviced. Inside in the pack, inside this container, inside this DC to DC converter, is a 10 amp fuse. Fuses, of course, are replacement items, and it's very difficult to get inside here and to take this out. But what makes it even more difficult to service this, once they break, is you can't go to AutoZone and buy this. You can't even go to Tesla and buy this. Mm-hmm. The only shot you have is at finding potentially a donor car that you can take this out of. So what a company like us does, we have to go in and repair the components right down to the circuit board level. And if you notice this gray material here, this is potting compound. And this impregnates about 40% of the components that are on the circuit board. So if you find a defective component underneath all that potting compound, you then have to do an archaeological dig to get down to that component before you can replace it. Luckily, on the other side of the circuit board, the pins for those components typically are available, so you can do some component level testing before you do the archaeological dig, that is. Now, this APS unit is the original Martech version, which Tesla at some point decided was inferior. So they went to another company called Delta, and they had them build an equivalent version of this, which does not have all that potting compound. But it is equally as inaccessible in that it resides inside that 1,000-pound pack, and in order to service it, you have to drop that out of the car and open up this portion here and then troubleshoot the component level.
I know as well that just from experience, having seen our guys work on these battery packs, more than once we have been caught by that 10 amp fuse. We get a battery pack, it comes back to life, we bring it back to charging. We have a specialty charging that helps us to charge one sheet at a time. We go to try to put the pack into the car, and we try to fire up the car, and nothing. And typically the error we get is something along the lines of the APS won't start, or the APS is malfunctioning. So drop the battery pack out, dig in, get to that, pull out the fuse, find out, yep, it's a bad fuse. Put it back in, pull everything back together, and then the car comes to life.
Now, one of the questions often asked is, well, why don't you go back to the manufacturer and buy some more there? The problem there is that this part ceased being made in 2008. It's highly custom. There is no off-the-shelf product like it that goes in other vehicles or other cars. And when we go back to these manufacturers that originally made product like this, and we try to talk them into recreating the product, they have an extraordinarily unreasonable minimum order quantity, which nobody is going to be able to meet, because with only 2,000 or so cars left, we would never see the return on investment.
Right.
So the only shot at keeping certain Roadster parts like this alive is to have a company like ours that can troubleshoot down to component level and repair the electronics in the car.
So we have a couple of different questions. First from Camzilla. We do appreciate you coming and watching us, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow as well on YouTube. From YouTube, Sunset Lights 100 says, I like the sunglasses approach. He says it's excellent.
Now we've got a TikTok question from Freedom270. He says, do you guys fix snap-on batteries? It's kind of funny that you mentioned that, Freedoms270, because one of our mechanics, a couple of them actually, buy snap-on tools. I'm more of a Harbor Freight guy. I can't see paying, $300 for a ratchet. But these guys, they're professionals, and they want the best of everything. So he actually just changed his snap-on battery for one of his drills, and it was like $300 or $400. And he didn't ask us to fix it. He asked us to recycle it. But the simple question, or the simple answer, is yes, those packs can be rebuilt. You may even be able to take that down to your local Batteries Plus, who may rebuild these types of packs. There isn't much to it. You have 18650 lithium-ion cells inside. The hardest part is getting it apart without breaking anything. But if they're skilled, they will be able to open up a seam and then close it back up.
Yep. Oh, Van Gogh is on YouTube now. He says, okay, I'm trying the YouTube live version. It's nice here. We think so too.
So let's see what else we have here. The DC to DC converter we just talked about. You may be interested, what does it do? Why is it in the car? Well, it takes the 400 volts that's inside the main large propulsion battery pack and brings it down to 13.5 volts 2 times. One time at 120 amps, the second time at 36.5 amps for the various 12-volt devices that are in a car. Now, if you remember during the Tesla Investor Day, Tesla is now switching to 48-volt batteries because the current requirements for the 12-volt battery continues to grow, and the wire sizes, wire harnesses, and circuit breakers are getting too large. So they're going to a 48-volt architecture. The Roadster, unfortunately, will always remain at a 13.5 or 12-volt type architecture. But what it powers is lights. It charges a 12-volt battery that's in the 2.X Roadsters. It powers the vehicle management system module, the switch pack module, the HVAC controller module, certain solenoids, door locks, the audio system, and windshield wiper motor. It was clearly not meant to be serviced, at least easily, sitting inside that large pack. So anyway, it looks like we got more questions.
Yes, we do. First from TikTok, the Hand. He's asking a question about repairing a Salvage S Model S Plaid. Now, the Hand, we really appreciate you joining us here this afternoon. The very quick answer to his question will be that we probably can. We'll go into details of your question and give you a full answer at the Gruber Morning Show, which happens tomorrow.
We do not have a service organization in California, however. And in fact, we've got a Model X Plaid in the shop right now. That one kind of threw me. Here you have a 6-seater family sedan that's capable of going 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds with grandma, the kids, the dog in the car. And I'm just thinking, what's the point? I understand in a Roadster it's a 2-seater sports car, right? But it was quite a vehicle.
I guess if you ever want the kids to get a joyride, put them in the back seat. Let's take off, kids.
Totally.
And
yeah.
take off will have a whole different meaning for them.
Now, the problem that the hand TikTok describes is the seats won't go forward or backwards. We find that those things are oftentimes a loose connection in the connector down below the seats. It could be a broken wiring harness. We just had 2 Model S's actually, where the doors, the windows, and the door handles were intermittent. And it turns out that the wiring harness portion that connects the car body to the door that's constantly opening and closing, the wires broke inside that, and it was making an intermittent connection.
Oh my gosh.
So, but that's where I would look, and I wish we could refer you to someone in California.
Yes. On TikTok, Patrick Niles has asked a question. What do you think of Tesla being sued for monopoly on parts?
I think the question is, should they be sued for monopoly on parts? And the simple answer to that is they have no obligation to continue to provide parts past a certain point. And the Roadster is 15 years old today. The fact that they're providing any parts is actually very generous of them. What any other manufacturer would do once they find difficulty continuing to maintain one of the products that they manufactured is advise customers to simply upgrade. Upgrade to Model 3, Model Y, and scrap that Roadster.
Or put $250,000 down with the hope that you'll eventually get another one.
The parts problem for us is identical for Tesla. And you can't go to a manufacturer and buy 50 of these DC to DC converters, or even 200. They're going to want a few thousand of them in order to justify restarting a production line and recreating a part like this. And again, they would never see the return on investment on that kind of a parts purchase.
Well, and I know that we had a fan assembly we were talking about in our last podcast even, where we helped to fabricate part of this fan assembly together because it was something that just isn't made anymore, and the original manufacturer wouldn't work with us. We've actually partnered with Tesla on some of that stuff.
And yeah, it was the same thing for Tesla. I mean, going back to the original manufacturing, saying, we need 50 of these, just wasn't going to fly. So what Tesla did was they came to us. We ended up buying one of the parts that went into this assembly, the fan assembly from Spall. And then our machine shop recreated the metal plate that it mounts onto, and our production group did the final assembly. And we're able to do small run production like this profitably compared to one of these large OEMs that isn't able to do that.
Right. The hand is following up with us. Great comment. Thank you, he says. My kids love to say 3, 2, 1, blast off. He says it's not really a family car, but the kids love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you save money by not having to take them to the amusement park.
That's right, because they'll go onto that roller coaster and they'll be bored because it's too slow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One final thing that I wanted to share with you are we get a lot of feedback from a variety of social media sites that we're active on, from Facebook to LinkedIn to Twitter to all the rest of them, Parler, Truth Social. And I found this particular one that came in from LinkedIn somewhat inspiring. What we had done was posted the success that we had with a Roadster that came in. The power electronics module had burnt up. The transistors were smoked. You could see it in the picture. And it was a gorgeous electric blue 2011 Tesla Roadster. So what we did was we posted pictures of the before and after when it came in, dead, of course, on dollies, and the final version. And so anyway, this particular viewer on LinkedIn said, if EVs ever become true classics, then we will need brilliant companies like Gruber and others to be successful businesses. We also need to encourage or force the manufacturers to keep supporting these vehicles with parts and service to keep them on the road. Otherwise, they fail in their mission to make a positive impact. And I like that comment. That encapsulates what we do and what we feel is very important with this iconic car.
There's an awful lot to the passion that we have to keep these classic cars. They're really, even though they don't fit the definition of classic in a lot of traditional senses, as far as age goes, the fact that there are so few of them that were made and that they really started the electric vehicle revolution makes them just one of a kind. And it really is a passion of ours to help keep them on the road and going as long as possible.
And in further Tesla Roadster podcasts, what we'd like to do is take you into the service centers, or our service center, I should say, and show you the operations. At some point in time, our service center manager, Victor, will join us. And the kinds of questions you can ask there are operations questions, even some pricing issues. I think somebody earlier asked about a price on one of the things that we were talking about. I don't see the question up there right now.
Yeah, there was a question about a price for a DC to DC converter.
Oh, yeah, okay. The only perspective we have there is a couple years ago, Tesla actually sold us a few of these, and they only had like 50 in stock at the time. And I think our cost back then was around $1,600. The cost to repair often comes up. What does it cost to repair something like this? Because of all of the variables and the unknowns, we have to do this on a time and materials basis. We don't know how much work is going to be involved, how many of those components are underneath the potting compound, which of course extends the time for the archaeological dig. And then what the costs of the components that have failed are. So we do that on a time and materials basis, and we usually can provide an estimate somewhere along the way and give the customer the option whether to continue or not. Now, having said that, with a part like this that's this rare, sometimes the only solution is to force or to do a repair because the car will be idled until this part is functioning again. We also, by the way, and I'll bring this back up here for just a moment, this is something that we talk about with power electronic modules. As you can see here, this is the potting compound. These are electrolytic capacitors, and these are identical in size, actually, to what's in the power electronic module. Well, electrolytic capacitors have a life, and a part like this should also be rebuilt. So when we repair one of these, we do the additional step, which is not only replace the defective components, but we then replace the wear or the deferred maintenance that's inside this, because you certainly don't want to open this up again.
Right.
It's going to be very costly to do it a second time at some point. And it's not a question of if it fails, they will fail. It is when they fail, not if.
Yeah, I mean, it's just as for reference for the people out here who might not know, the oil that is in those capacitors will dry out over time. And typically they're, I know in the critical power space, we have the same type of thing. Capacitors will be oil filled and they hold that electric charge. They only last about 8 years. I believe it's not much different for those as well. And so when you're talking about a 15-year-old car, it's prudent for us to be able to do that.
We're 53 minutes, guys, so we got to wrap it up
Okay.
here.
So we're coming on an hour, and we have a question from YouTube, Joey's Cleaning Lady. I think we've seen Joey's Cleaning Lady comment on our videos, and we appreciate you joining us. The question is it true that Tesla is putting in new PEMs with their 3.0 packs versus just adding the board? What Tesla does during a 3.0 upgrade is change the DMC module or the PEC board because there are some resistor changes to accommodate the different cells that are being used in the 3.0 pack, different charge curves, for example. But the original PEM is left intact. It is left in the car. If they have a problem with the PEM, which is sometimes the case after a 3.0 upgrade, then Tesla does swap the entire power electronics module.
On TikTok, Nate Allen asks, why do they have sunglasses on inside?
Do we have an answer for that in this?
I'm not sure we have a great answer for that. Jesse, do you have a good answer for that one?
No, just keep watching. You'll find out.
Keep watching.
There we go.
Exactly, yes.
And then a couple more. First, we'll go to Van Gogh again. It says, I heard a story that a man got in the wrong Tesla and drove away in the wrong car.
Interesting. How did the key fob work in that case?
Well, I will admit, I'm terrible about just leaving my keys in the car.
Okay, all right.
I don't think about it. When those door handles present, they'll always go away. I think, okay, it's locked, it's good to go. And then it's, sometime later coming back to the car trying to figure out what's going on. And if there's a key in that car somehow, you just press it and no big deal. Mm-hmm. So I could see that happen. My wife would call me names and tell me that I'm kind of an idiot about it, which I am.
So we've got a TikTok comment from SoCal. It says, very good evening show. Well, thank you. You must be East Coast. It's, I think, 4 or 5 o'clock our time here.
Yes.
Tomorrow morning we will have our normal EV show, and we're not sure what time yet. With the daylight savings changes, we're trying to dial in the optimum audience retention and the optimum time for our viewers. So we would love to hear from you if you have any particular times that work better for you. But at this point, we know it'll be sometime in the morning, probably around 10 o'clock or so versus the normal 8:30 Mountain Standard Time that we have that we used to do. We have a follow-up answer from Joey's cleaning lady. Says there have been reports that PEMs that come back after a 3.0 upgrade do not have the badging at all, which is how they were shipped from Quanta Cora, actually. We also have seen one like that where the actual aluminum escutcheon was missing off of the PEM lid. And the customer has a sports Roadster, and he was really looking forward to keeping that on his car. I would say that the reason for that is that Tesla is running out of parts, and that's probably one of the parts that is no longer available. It does seem to be the type of part, though, that wouldn't be extraordinarily expensive to recreate, like a DC to DC converter. So that may be something that Tesla will put back in inventory.
Yep.
Looks like SoCal. We've got greetings from Germany, man. Well, greetings to you too. Love to hear what part of Germany you're from. I'd be curious because I'm from there myself.
Absolutely. And then we have one more TikTok. This one's from Andy Casper. Are you guys aware of the do-it-yourself CCS1 retrofit for Model 3? Would you have any concerns about warranty? Well, Andy, that's something that we'd like to dive into and be able to give a longer answer for. So I'm going to encourage you to come back tomorrow for the Gruber Morning Show podcast. We tend to try to keep our questions and answers here pretty Roadster focused, but it's a great question and something that I think is worth having a discussion on.
A quick answer is the term DIY or DIY and out of warranty are almost synonymous. You have to be very careful anytime you alter a vehicle that is under the drivetrain or under the Tesla warranty.
By all means. So I think we're about at our hour now.
We are, and we'd like to invite all of the Roadster owners to continue to support this podcast. It is collaborative. We will eventually have people joining us from Tesla, ex-Tesla people, and I'm sure that the information shared will be relevant and of interest to anyone that still owns a Roadster. What we also will continue to do is to share information about our successes and failures in the Gruber Motor Company shop which is heavily focused on working on Tesla Roadsters. And we see aging issues that normal Tesla service centers do not see because of the volume of Roadsters that we do. And we can do some predictive analysis with that as well.
Well, thank you guys again very much for joining us this afternoon. Look forward to having another one in another week.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.